In the heart of the Serengeti, where the land stretches wide and the sky seems endless, there was a Maasai village. This village, surrounded by acacia trees and the calls of lions at night, was full of life, stories, and strict traditions. From this village came a tale of love so strong it fought against everything in its path. Nyaku was the daughter of the village elder. She was known for her beauty and her kind heart. Her laughter was as light as the breeze, and her eyes shone like stars at night. Saitoti, the son of a humble herder, was strong and brave. He protected the village with the courage of a lion. But when he looked at Nyaku, his eyes softened and his heart felt warm. They had known each other since they were children. They played by the river, chasing birds and sharing dreams. As they grew older, their friendship changed. It became something deeper, something neither of them could ignore. One day, as the sun began to set and painted the sky with red and orange, Saitoti and Nyaku sat under their favorite tree. Nyaku carefully wove beads into a bracelet, her fingers quick and skilled. Saitoti spoke softly. "Nyaku, do you ever think about what life could be if we could choose for ourselves?" Nyaku looked up and smiled sadly. "I do, Saitoti, but my father would never allow us to be together. He has plans for me, and you know how he is about our traditions." Saitoti's eyes grew serious. "I would face any challenge to be with you, even if it means going against the old ways." Nyaku's heart raced at his words, but fear mixed with her hope. "Be careful, Saitoti. Our love is strong, but so are the voices that oppose us." They sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the village as the night crept in, knowing that their bond was both beautiful and dangerous. Rumors began to spread like the wind. A warrior named Lencho, who was jealous of Saitoti's skill and the attention Nyaku gave him, followed them one evening. He saw their secret meeting and ran to the elder to tell him what he saw. The village woke to a loud call. "Come, gather," the elder shouted. Saitoti stood in the center of the circle, his head held high, even as the warriors held his arms tightly. "Saitoti," the elder's voice boomed, "do you deny meeting my daughter in secret?" Saitoti's eyes met Nyaku's for a brief moment before he spoke. "I do not deny it. I love Nyaku, and I would face anything for her." Gasps spread through the crowd. Nyaku's father's face grew dark. "You speak of love, but what of respect for your people and our ways? You must prove your worth. You will face the trials of the ancestors." Nyaku's heart ached, but she knew there was no way to change her father's mind now. Saitoti had to go through the trials, or be cast out forever. The first trial was the Night of Solitude, a test only the bravest dared face. Saitoti stood at the edge of the village as the sun sank below the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the plain. The elders handed him a spear, their faces solemn. The silence from the crowd pressed on him, heavy as stone. "Remember, Saitoti," one elder said, his deep voice carrying in the still air. "This is not just a test of strength, but of spirit." With a final nod, Saitoti turned and walked into the gathering dark, leaving behind the flicker of torchlight and the worried eyes of Nyaku. He stepped into the open land, where the grass whispered secrets to the wind and the sky stretched like a great dark canvas above him. The night grew deeper, wrapping the land in an inky blanket. Saitoti's breath clouded in the cool air, and the faint rustle of leaves spoke of unseen creatures. He found a spot on a small hill and built a fire, the warm glow pushing back the darkness only slightly. Sparks crackled and danced up into the sky, swallowed by the deep black above. Far off, a lion's roar echoed across the plain, strong and deep. It was followed by the high-pitched cackling of hyenas. Saitoti's grip on his spear tightened, but he kept his face steady, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "For Nyaku, I will not be afraid," he whispered, the words like an oath. The firelight flickered across his face, casting long shadows over the ground. The wind shifted, carrying with it the musky scent of nearby animals. The eyes of a hyena glinted in the darkness, just beyond the reach of the fire. It circled, watching him, its laughter eerie and sharp. Saitoti kept his spear ready, muscles tense, every sense alert. Hours passed, each one crawling slowly. The stars wheeled above him, silent witnesses to his trial. The cold grew sharper, biting into his skin. Saitoti's fingers numbed, and the fire shrank, its warmth fading. He added dry grass and wood to keep it alive, watching the glow strengthen. A sudden rustle came from behind. Saitoti spun around, the tip of his spear aimed at the sound. A wild dog stood at the edge of the light, eyes wary, before it slinked away into the shadows. He exhaled slowly, steadying his breath. The night stretched on, and exhaustion pulled at his eyes, but Saitoti did not rest. He thought of Neiku, her smile, the way her eyes lit up when they spoke under the acacia tree. He whispered to the night, "Neiku, you are with me, even now." The thought filled him with warmth, steadying the beat of his heart. As the darkest hour passed, the horizon began to lighten. The sounds of the night faded, replaced by the first songs of morning birds. The chill loosened its grip, and a soft grey light washed over the land. Saitoti stood as the sun crested the horizon, its golden rays spilling out like hope. His eyes, fierce and determined, returned to the village. The elders waited, their faces still. They nodded, acknowledging his courage, but kept their expressions firm, knowing more trials lay ahead. But Saitoti knew this was only the beginning. The first trial had tested his courage, but the next would demand even more. The second trial tested his patience and skill. Saitoti had to create a necklace from red clay and beads, a symbol of unity. The elders watched as he worked, their eyes sharp. His fingers moved carefully, threading each bead, shaping the clay until it formed a perfect circle. Neiku stood behind the crowd, her heart beating fast. She silently cheered him on, praying for his success. When Saitoti finished, he held up the necklace. The elders examined it and nodded again. "You pass," said the eldest one, but still their expressions remained serious. The final test awaited, one that could break even the strongest. The village was alive with celebration that night. Fires crackled brightly, casting golden light on the dancing figures of warriors and children. The rhythmic beat of drums echoed into the night, carrying songs of joy and unity. Saitoti, now a symbol of hope and strength, sat surrounded by friends, his eyes soft with the glow of victory. Neiku watched from across the crowd, pride filling her heart like the warmth of the fire. But in the shadows, where the firelight barely reached, another set of eyes watched with a different intent. Lencho, his jaw clenched and eyes dark with envy, stood hidden behind a cluster of acacia branches. His hand gripped a dagger, its polished blade catching the flicker of the flames. Lencho's heart pounded with resentment. He had watched Saitoti succeed where he himself had failed, watched as Neiku's eyes, once so distant, shone for Saitoti alone. The noise of celebration roared in his ears, fueling his anger until it spilled over into action. "Tonight," he thought, gripping the dagger tighter, "I will end this." Naiku's laughter rose above the crowd for a moment, drawing Lencho's gaze. As his eyes flicked to her, a shadow of doubt crossed his mind, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He stepped forward, moving along the edge of the dancing throng, keeping low, blending into the darkness. Naiku's eyes, keen with the intuition of someone who cared deeply, suddenly caught the glint of movement. At first she thought it was just a trick of the firelight, but then she saw Lencho, his face twisted with determination, the dagger in his hand aimed at Saitoti. Her heart lurched. Without a second thought, she pushed through the crowd, the sound of laughter and singing muffled by the rush of blood in her ears. "Saitoti!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Behind you!" Saitoti's smile fell away, his instincts sharper than ever. He turned just in time to see Lencho lunging forward, eyes blazing with desperation. The sound of Naiku's warning carried across the crowd, and the warriors, trained to sense danger, moved quickly. A dozen hands reached out as Lencho's advance faltered. He stumbled, the dagger slipping from his grasp and clattering to the ground. Lencho's face twisted with anger and defeat as he was seized by the warriors, their expressions hard and unforgiving. He struggled, shouting curses that splintered into the night air. "You were never worthy," he spat, his voice shaking as he was dragged toward the elder. The music stopped, and silence rippled across the gathering. The elder, who had been observing from his place of honor, stood up slowly, leaning on his intricately carved staff. His gaze, deep with both wisdom and disappointment, swept over the crowd before landing on Lencho. "Lencho," the elder said, his voice steady and grave, "you have betrayed not just a brother, but the spirit of our people. Saitoti has proven his worth with courage, while you let jealousy twist your soul." Lencho's struggles ceased, and his head dropped, shame overtaking his defiance. The warriors dragged him away, his shouts now whispers lost in the crackling of the fire. Turning to the crowd, the elder raised his staff high. "Saitoti has proven his worth, but let this night be a lesson. Betrayal has no place among us. Let us remember this as we honor those who protect and uplift our village." The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices carrying pride and relief. Nyaku stepped forward, her eyes locked on Saitoti's. Tears of gratitude and joy ran down her cheeks. He reached out, taking her hand in his, the connection between them unspoken but clear as the rising stars. In the golden light of the new day, Nyaku and Saitoti stood side by side. The elder stepped forward, his face no longer hard but soft with pride. "Today, we see that love can be strong enough to honor our past and build our future," he said. He placed the red clay necklace around Saitoti's neck, a symbol of his victory and unity with Nyaku. Nyaku looked at Saitoti, eyes shining. "We made it, Saitoti," she whispered. He smiled, a smile full of joy and peace. "Yes, Nyaku, we did."